Welcome back, my fellow colleagues. This is 121 best time to buy and sell stock. To be honest, this problem right here, it's giving me a bit of a stroke. I'm going to be honest. The problem doesn't really make any sense. The solution I'm going to show you today is slower than the actual solution, the possible solution, but it's far more intuitive. It's going to be useful in other problems. There's a really fast solution you can do with Kadane's algorithm / the sliding window pattern. But that algorithm makes sense and it's important to know. But in the case of this problem, it doesn't really make any sense. So what we're going to do is, I'll just read the problem. So you're given an array of prices, for which party sub I is the price of a given stock on the ith day. You're only permitted to complete at most one transaction. In other words, you can buy one and sell one share of the stock. You cannot sell the stock before you buy one. Return the maximum profit you can achieve from this transaction. If you cannot achieve any profit, return 0. So basically, if you can't buy a stock and sell it for more and actually make money off it, then you return 0. So prices. So for each day of the week here, we have 6 prices here. So on 7, on the first day, right, you can't really buy and then make any money, right? So if you buy on the first day and you sell any other day, you lose money. The first day you can buy on the second day for 1. Sell on the 5th day for 6, and you'll make a profit of 5. Like they say here, profit 6 minus 1 equals 5. Prices 7. So this one, obviously, the prices here, you can't really make any money. If you buy on the 7th day, you can't sell ever again to make any money. Neither with any of the other elements in the list, right? So how do we go about solving this, right? And I'm just gonna pop something. Give me 1 second. Boom, we're back. Okay, so I had to find something. So this is if you were to plot this graph, right? I'm not sure if this is the one. Let me see, 7, 1, 5. Okay, so if we were to plot this, right? So these are this is the list of prices that we receive, right? So you want to find the time that we can make the maximum amount of profit, right? But you can see that the only times when you can actually make profit, so this is kind of similar to if you were to visualize this, you see we can draw the points here and then draw lines between them. What you get is a series of peaks and valleys, right? And so the only time you can actually make money on something is when you're going from a low point to a high point, right? Because you could buy here and sell here, although your profit would only be 1 unit. You're going from a low point to a high point here, so you could buy here for 3 and sell here for 6, making 2s profit, right? So we know that profit is defined as going from a low point to a high point, and the actual profit itself is the subtraction of the high point minus the low point, right? So that is important information. So how is this algorithm going to work, right? So there's a few things you can actually do here. Let me make some space. So the first way you could do it, right? So we need to find the maximum profit we could make, right? So the first thing you could do, right, you could say, okay, well, I'm going to find a situation where profit can be made. So we have to find a portion, a part on the graph where we could actually sell our stock and actually make money. So it's not going to be here, right? And it's not going to be anywhere we're going from a high point to a low point, right? Because that would be a loss. If you buy on 7 and sell on 2, you lose. You have a net loss of like -5, right? So pretty much going to be anywhere we're going from a low point right here to a high point. So let's just say we find one of these points, right, which is here. It's the 2nd day, right? So what we're going to do is, so for each day, we're going to, so if we look at this right here, this is the list that's been plotted. So for the first day, we're going to assume that we can buy stock on this day, right? And if we loop through, we can't find any point on the graph where 7 is not the largest number, right? So we can never find a point where 7 is the valley before the peak, right? In the sense that 2 is the valley before the peak on 3. So pretty much this is going to be n squared runtime. So for each day, we're going to take the day, assume that we bought stock on that day, and then try and find a day where we can sell it for that profit. And if we can't find it, well, we'll just buy the next stock on the next day. So we'll just be like, okay, we'll buy the stock on day 2. And then from there, we'll iterate through and try to find the point where we can make the most amount of profit. So that being the case, this is going to run an n squared. runtime. So for each day, we're going to iterate for the rest of the elements in the list. But there are a few optimizations we can do to actually make this pass, because n squared is a possible solution to this problem, but it exceeds the time limit, right? So there are a few variables we're going to need. We're going to need max profit is going to be equal to 0. And then the other thing we're going to have a stock price is going to be equal to 0, and index is going to be equal to 0. Why do we have index? So this is going to be for one of the optimizations, right? So when you have n squared runtime, it's usually something where you have for loop inside for loop, right? But because of the nature of this problem, we can skip certain things, right? So let's say on the second day, right? If on the second day we're iterating, we buy the stock on the second day, we try to find a point where we can sell the stock for the most amount of money, right? If we find that that day is here on the 5th day, then we know that's the maximum amount of profit we can make for that point, right? So what we can do is we can kind of skip 2 to 5, because there's no point in between here we can sell and make more money than we did between 2 and 5. So that's kind of how we're going to optimize a little bit. And so what we're going to do here, we're going to use a while loop instead, just so we can skip. We would update the outer loop to skip certain values when we've calculated more values. We've calculated the maximum profit we could make for a range. So this loop is going to run while index is less than the length of prices minus 1. Why minus 1? Because to find, like we said, to find a point where we can actually make profit, we have to find a low point followed by a high point, right? Which means we have to check 2 indices at the same time. If we have to check 2 indices at the same time, iterating one index each time, then we have to do minus 1 so that we don't go out of bounds, right? So, like we said, we're going to assume that we bought the stock on that day. So our stock price is going to be equal to prices sub index. And then our inner loop is going to loop over all the other possible values in the list, right? To see how much money, the maximum amount of profit we could make if we bought this stock on this day. Can we sell it any other day to make money? So for, we're just going to call this in range of len of prices. Boom, because we want to run for every price in there. But we're starting at index. I mean, we're already started at index, right? So we don't want to start from the beginning, right? So let's just say, just say we're going to start at 4. Like we already did 4 times through the list. We're going to start at 4, right? So our stock price is going to be 4, right? We don't want our for loop to start all the way from 1, 2, and 3, right? Because you can't buy a stock in the future and sell it in the past, right? So our inner loop has to start where our stock price starts, right? After our stock price starts. So if we buy on the 4th day, we can only sell it on the 5th, 6th, and any day after the 4th, right? We can't sell it on the first, second, and third days. So that's why our loop is actually going to start from index and then go to the length of prices, right? So that makes sense there. And so the second thing we want to do, right, before we jump into this for loop, right, because we said we only wanted to start checking for each price when it was possible to make a profit, right? So if we buy our stock on day 1, right, there's no reason that we should have to loop for every possible day, right, to see if we can make a profit, because it's impossible. 7 is the highest value in this list. You can never make any profit, right? So there's no reason to run this for loop for every item in the list if the stock price is already defined in a way that we won't make any money. So first thing we want to do, we only run this for loop if we're at a point where we can define profit, right? So low point going to a high point, we know that we can at least from this point sell this right here and we'll make money, right? So we'll do if prices sub index is less than prices, and we'll just replace prices sub index with stock price sub index plus 1. Then we'll run the for loop, right? Because we know it's possible to make money here. And then for when the for loop starts, if we start at 2, right, for each number in the list starting from where we bought the stock price. We want to see if we can, it'll be the maximum profit. So we can do there is we'll say if, we'll say if high point to low point. Oh yeah, so you want to see if this will be higher than the profit that we can make. So if stock price, all right, so if stock price is less than or equal to prices sub inner, right? So we know that we bought our stock price here, right? If our stock price is less than this index right here, which will be inner, that means we can sell it to make profit, right? If that's the case, then that's pretty dope. So let's see if it's the max profit, right? So to do that, we'll take the max of max profit and prices sub inner minus stock price, which is perfect. Now the else condition here, which is kind of going to expedite this process, if it's not less than or equal to it, right, that means it's greater than it, which means we're going from a point kind of like, let me see, a point kind of like this, right? It means we're going from a high point to a low point. If that's the case, then we should hop out, right? And what we'll do is we'll hop out of the loop, and before we do that, we'll set index equal to inner minus 1 so we don't skip any indexes. And then what we'll do is we'll hop all the way back out to the while loop and make sure this doesn't run forever. We'll say index plus equal 1. And so this should do, and then we'll return max profit. This should run pretty, okay, so 52 milliseconds is not that bad. Faster than 98% of the solution. So just with a few of these optimizations, then it'll run a little bit faster. The time complexity here, I mean, we have a double for loop. I mean, we're optimizing a little bit, but worst case complexity here is going to be n squared. Space complexity here is going to be constant space, since we're just using a few different variables to calculate the maximum profit. It's also constant time because the variables used to calculate this aren't going to scale with the input to the function. So that is best time to buy and sell a stock.